Hi, everybody. How are you doing? I always envy rebels with a cause, because I think most rebels are just people who are bored, restless, uncomfortable in their own skin. So this is a story about my dad, who was one of those people. My father just couldn't sit still, so he got a job as a traveling salesman. When he was home, he and his buddies would go from bar to bar, but they couldn't stay at one bar because they would get bored, so like bees, they float from bar to bar. Instead, they were the ones getting pollinated. But he told me one time, in a moment of reflection, that the worst experience of his life was during World War II, because he had been drafted. He went in, and he found out for the first time he had a heart condition, and they said, "Oh no, you can't go in the Navy. You have to go in the Merchant Marines." So in the Merchant Marines, and he said he was so bored because there was no action. All they would do were loading up supplies, that he jumped ship off of Rio de Janeiro, went AWOL, and had the greatest week of his life. He said he learned to surf, local girls, etc. Now, does anybody believe that story? I didn't believe it, and because part of the reason I had seen him in action, he had a scar on his chest from open heart surgery, a big X on his chest, and women would come up to him on the beach and go, "What happened to you?" And he'd go, "Oh, back in the war, grenade in the foxhole, it was either me or my men." So I'd heard that stuff. So you can imagine my shock. He dies, and I go through his things, and there's all this paperwork from Rio de Janeiro of disciplinary proceedings that he had jumped ship in Rio. And now I felt this incredible loss because I had never asked him any questions about it, about the details about this incredible thing he had done. I just assumed he was bullshitting. But that explains what happened with the open heart surgery. Because when he went in for open heart surgery, it's 1968, he's 45 years old. And at that time, it's more of a risky surgery. And when you would have a surgery back then, they would keep you, just like now, if you have a child, they just throw you right out of the hospital after a day or two. But back then, they keep you for a while to observe you. So he's in there, and we visit him in the hospital, and he was an animal in a cage. He was just miserable. And he just couldn't stand. He had a roommate, and he called him that nervous guy. And I'm like, "Dad, the guy had a heart attack, and he's getting surgery. Take it easy." And I had a nervous Nelly over there. So he's all frustrated sitting in his bed. And his friends, so what happened was one night, it's Saturday night, a nurse came to see him, and she stepped in his room and then looked left and looked right and then closed the door, which is never a good sign in the hospital. And she went in and she said, "Wow, you feel hot. I feel hot too." And she started to take off her clothes. His roommate popped up looking, but my father immediately figured out what was going on. He said, "Where are they?" Because he had figured out that his nitwit friends had sent a stripper dressed as a nurse into a hospital, into a cardiac unit. So my father escaped the hospital. He left, and I found this out because at the time I was 13, and my job at the household was I filled phone calls. My father had gone bankrupt, and there were a lot of angry bill collectors. And they would call up, and I had the best phone manner because I would say, like, name, and then I'd go, "What's the nature of your threat?" And I'd write it down. So I get the phone call from the hospital, and they said, "Is your father there?" And I said, "No, he's at the hospital." No, he's not. And I go, "Mom." And then we got in the car, and we drove around looking for him. And we didn't find him. He was found approximately 4 o'clock in the morning outside a lunch wagon in North Philadelphia in his jammies, his hospital jammies, according to the authorities, feeling no pain. We went to visit him the next day. My mother would not go into the room. She stayed out. And there were 3 things I noticed right away. When we went in, the roommate was no longer there, which I have, who knows? Maybe him and nurse stripper went off. There's a tombstone somewhere with one word saying, like, "Wow." Second thing was that they had my father handcuffed to the bed like he was a criminal, so he couldn't leave. And the third thing was that he was sedated. And he was a restless sleeper, too. But this was one time he was restfully sleeping with a smile on his face, I think dreaming of Rio and rebellions past, present, and future. Thank you.